Come on, so since
Somebody.
first Wednesday crowd, let's give it up. Who's excited to be in the house?
Kevin's excited.
You guys made it. We love that you did. If we haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Brian, and I have the privilege of serving on the pastoral team here. And this, you all know who this is. It is my best friend.
Oh,
best friend to the core.
I'm your best friend?
Not just on staff, like in general, best friend. So lucky to be up here. Paris Bear, our youth pastor. Give it up for Paris.
I love you.
Thank you.
I love
It's
you.
a dangerous thing when you give two of us a microphone and they don't know. You get somebody like a close friend like Paris up here who has influence with the media team, has a lot of dangerous pictures, a lot of embarrassing stories. I don't know. I'm going to call your shot.
Yeah, no. It's just funny you said that because I wasn't going to do this. I literally wasn't going to do this. But
I'll call
Josh,
your shot. You're gonna throw it up.
I know you know what I'm talking about right now because
Yo,
this
so
is how.
you did do it.
Oh, no, I'm doing it right now,
yeah,
okay? Because you can't come out here being like, oh, this is my best friend and how good he is and everyone give him some props. And I can't be like, you want to know who my best friend is? Who just sends me like encouraging pictures, and if we have it, it is available. If not, I'm gonna post it on my Instagram.
Yeah,
so
we don't good.
But
that's fine. Like 30 people will see it, and then Sandy Bear get it off. It's fine. It's fine. So glad that you guys are in the house, and like these moments are so special. I love First Wednesdays. I love what's happening out on the west side on Sundays and hearing what's happening downtown and right here in Northtown. But there's something special about coming together in corporate worship and just seeking God together. So thank you for being here. We got something special. You can tell. There's 4 chairs, 2 of us. We're not normal.
Right, and also they gave us mics.
I know, I really can't believe it.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie, because it's dangerous.
It's like they didn't learn after Christmas.
Like we don't know what to do. We came up in the middle of the announcement. We're just up here standing, like, oh, is this what you do?
I don't know what to do with my hands.
No, this is not what you do.
You know,
No. But tonight, we have the opportunity to actually ask our lead pastors Peter and Carolyn Haas, some tough hitting questions. Because I'm telling you, there is wisdom in our lead pastors.
Absolutely.
And we get glimpses of it on Sundays, and we get glimpses of it when we interact with them. But tonight, our hope and our goal is that we can get a lot more from Pastors Peter and Carolyn Haas. So we're going to give them all the questions. So if everyone, can you guys do me a favor? Can you help welcome our lead pastors, Pastors Peter and Carolyn Haas, to the stage? Man, I'm not gonna lie, I've never had someone give a standing ovation after I've done anything. I know it wasn't for me, but it feels good. You know, it's like, oh my God, they're all standing and clapping. This just feels so amazing. This feels so good. Okay, so first of all, I feel like I have to like thank you for coming to, because what it feels like an interview. And I know that you got some of the questions that we want to ask, but there might be some questions that you don't know. Oh. And I hope you're prepared.
Oh.
You gave us a lot of freedom.
Peter's always
regret
prepared.
this already.
Okay, so before we get into the hard-hitting questions, I know that there are some serious questions that we all want to know. So I got 10 lightning round questions, and I don't want you guys to look at each other. I don't want you guys to think about it. I don't want any like, okay, for the sake of that, we're going to make sure that we answer correctly and like in the same and link. No. I want individual answers on these questions.
We want to know the real Peter and Carolyn.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to go like real fast. So first question, favorite restaurant?
Nolo's.
Hope Breakfast Bar.
Ooh, okay. No, that's actually great. I love Hope.
Nolo's has a salad that will change your life. I'm just telling you.
No, there's very few people. Salad that changed your life?
I'm telling you.
I'll tell you what, though, you're never gonna hear me say that. Michelle's clapping. It's like the only person. All right, like
I think date night for you and Melissa, and you need to try this salad.
I'll
and
try
then you
it.
can come
I
back
don't
and
know.
testify.
It changed my life.
Okay, next question. Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Wow. Thinking.
I don't know.
You don't. Oh.
That is too hard of a question.
I mean,
Not chocolate.
not chocolate.
Vanilla.
Vanilla? Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
Okay, now fall or spring?
Fall.
Fall?
I don't think Minnesota has a spring. At least we
That is
didn't
true.
this year.
That's true.
Did it ever happen?
That's
No.
very true. Okay, now bacon or sausage?
Bacon.
Ooh, okay. Now, this next question I actually have to put in there because this answer might offend me just a little bit, okay? So I'm kind of putting it on pins and needles. Heavy metal music or country music?
I'd prefer neither, but if we're gonna be honest, I can't stand country music, which is offensive to Paris. And I have to be honest, Def Leppard was my favorite band when I was in 10th grade, so.
I mean, I can't argue that, but also, country music it's really that bad? Country music is
I
that
like
bad?
Taylor Swift, if that counts.
Oh no, that's not quite the same.
country. All right, hypothetically speaking, somebody drives your vehicle, turns your radio station to a country station, cranks the radio up all the way, turns the car off, gives the keys back to you. What do?
I will freak out and potentially write you up.
I'll attack.
Wait, hang on, 1 second. Potentially, like, am I written up and I don't know about it?
No,
Am
you're
I
not
learning
written
about this
up.
right now?
You're not written up.
Okay, cool.
But Chris
Okay,
Stapleton on
okay,
country, come
every
on, you
time-
gotta go.
Every time they drive my wife's car, they crank up country music.
Yeah, we do.
And leave it on, so then when she starts it, it just blasts us.
Yeah, we do.
Scares
Now
the heck out
I've
of me.
declared a law that if anyone drives my car, they may not touch the radio. That's how picky I am.
Hard
so.
to do.
No, that's good. That's good. Okay, now, would you guys rather clean the bathroom or clean the garage?
Garage
Bathroom,
every
Oh.
day.
never.
That actually might be the key to like a healthy marriage right there. I'm just like,
We're a good team.
we have our
We are
zones
good
in the
team.
house. Don't touch
Exactly.
that zone. It's
That's
my zone. I'll
exactly
clean it when I
Yep.
get. Okay, that's awesome. Cool. All right, mountains or beach vacation?
Beach.
Beach. Oh, like California beach or Florida beach, or does it matter?
Probably Florida.
Florida?
Yeah.
Humid.
Yeah.
Go.
No, just warm water.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't get in the water. I'm more like knees in and feeling good. I'm not.
You're
really-
right. I don't get in the water either. I just like the suntan. So yeah,
Okay. Sleep in or wake up early?
Sleep in.
Okay. Board games or video games?
Why laugh?
Board games, and
Yeah.
only Eden will play with me. No one else will play board games with me. So it's very frustrating.
Eden, thank you. Good
That's
job.
because she won't play the right board games. You know what I'm saying? So video games any
Like-
day.
No, I understand that. We used to play Monopoly growing up, but my mom would have like her Swiss bank account under the couch, kind of a thing. So like I'd be like, "How are you getting all this money?" And she's pulling it out of the couch, and I'm like,
Monopoly ruins families every time.
It does.
Every
I
time.
don't
It's
play
so good.
Monopoly, but
No one-
Settlers of
no one
Catan
plays by
is
the real
awesome.
rules.
When have
Monopoly.
you ever played Monopoly where somebody didn't just hit the board game and walk off?
"Never," because I'm the one hitting the board game and walking off. That's what's happening.
I know.
Oh, okay. All right. Last question: Starbucks or Caribou?
Starbucks.
Nice.
Sorry, Minnesota. Just got to
Okay.
stick with Starbucks.
Okay, so we got those questions out of the way, and kind of as we were hearing you guys talk, and as we were kind of processing kind of what questions to ask you, first real question: do you guys have like any quirks that kind of like irritate the other person, maybe just a little bit? Just like hypothetically speaking, from someone who got married like under a year ago, like example. We're walking to the grocery store. We can see the grocery store. We can see the route we need to take to the grocery store, but you're still getting step-by-step directions of how to get to the grocery store. Like, that's just something that like I just kind of popped in my mind a little bit.
It seems specific, but or I don't know if either of you like if they box you out of the dishwasher and then repack what you packed in front of you and tell you that you're terrible at it. I don't know. Those like any quirks? Just me, maybe 12 years.
Right. Is there anything like that? Just hypothetically speaking, really, is what we're trying to ask.
No, we're good. We're good.
I will freak out if I have a issue if people crank water bottles.
Oh.
Like, I will freak out. Like,
Jonathan, front row, loving that. Oh my!
like don't crinkle a water
Sometimes
bottle. in
it
front of me.
has to crinkle
No.
in order to throw it away. You
No.
don't want it to
It
fill.
doesn't ever need to crinkle.
Doesn't. Which actually is probably like why Pastor Carolyn likes drinking out of mugs and not paper cups.
What?
Uh, here's her
No, because I love you. I
idiosyncrasy.
know that you drink out of paper cups.
Yeah, she will always have
like, this is a really rare moment where she doesn't have 4 beverages on her at any given moment. She always has 3 or 4 beverages that she never drinks. So she'll get a full thing of coffee, and then at the end of the day, it'll be sitting there. It's just like, okay.
This is already going 10 times better than I thought it would. Oh my, we're getting so much information right now.
I actually
oh my
do
goodness.
drink the majority of my beverages, and I am the most hydrated human I know.
Yeah.
And I make sure everyone around me is hydrated as well, so.
More hydrated than you.
That's right.
But she won't let me drink her Zevia, ever.
I'm allowed 1 can a day, so.
Okay.
Okay, so kind of doing some research on you guys a little bit as we're getting ready for this. Found you guys have been married for 27 years. Oh my goodness. And like comparatively, that's like almost as long as I've been breathing air. Is like you guys have been married.
You could have been our son.
It would have been the fro,
odd. Something probably.
But after 27 years, like, how did you guys make it 27 years?
Well, a quick shout out to my parents sitting in row 3. I have to say it because they just celebrated 52 years, right? And 12 good years. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm just 13. We know, 14. I honestly, it's funny how you and I have known each other in so many different life phases. So she knew me before Christ. Before I had, many of you guys know that I converted to Christianity. I was in a nightclub. I prayed, God, if you exist, show me what religion is the right religion. And 30 seconds later, a guy came up to me and shared Jesus with me. And I'll never forget, so I gave my life to Christ in the nightclub. I got off of work because I was a DJ at 2 a.m. I went to the hotel that she was working night shift at. And I'll never forget, she was just chain smoking at 2:30 in the morning. And I was like, Carolyn, you'll never believe what I did tonight. And she goes, what did you do? I'm like, I gave my life to Jesus and I'm going to church tomorrow. You should go with me. And I'll never forget, she like took the smoke out of her mouth and she goes, you did what? And I'm like, it was so cool. I mean, I literally prayed, and then like seconds later, a guy came up to me and told me, I feel like I'm supposed to tell you, you need Jesus. I'm like, what are the odds? What are the odds? It was just it blew my mind. And, she knew me in that phase. What I didn't understand is that she grew up in church and had half the Bible memorized, and which was a very valuable resource for me. And it's funny how, like, I when I met her, just being fully honest, I started dating her because I thought she was hot, right? But then, what I didn't realize was just how much of a resource just your passion for Jesus and your knowledge of his word really, really was. And so now it's almost funny how really the most attractive thing about you is your ability to know God's word and be able to proclaim it over everything. And I keep thinking about how many, like all of the criteria I would have looked for in a spouse early on is so fundamentally changed for me after 27 years. And what I love about you is just we've been able to reinvent ourselves 1,000 times over. And, we've known each other through so many hairstyles. You knew me before chest hair. You know what I mean? Like, you knew me, like, we've known
You had 7 chest hairs.
7.
7. Count them.
Every joke I can think of right now is over the line for the pulpit. But I just... No, actually, to be honest, if I could encourage you guys, after 27 years, let me just say this. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what phase of life you're in, but God can reinvent you so thoroughly that it doesn't matter how low it might feel right now. There's been moments where we fell in and out of love. There's the winter of love and the summer of love. And sometimes the winter would last a couple of years and sometimes the summer would last even more, right? But like in the end, if you stick in it and you let God be a part of it, God will always just fertilize that soil and you'll fall deeply in love again. And because it's like Drew mentioned even this last Sunday, feelings do follow focus. Where your treasure is, there your heart is following, Jesus says. In other words, when you're treasuring each other, even when you don't feel like it, and there's a lot of times where she has to treasure me when she doesn't feel like it, like 2 nights ago, you know what I'm talking about, and where she had to treasure me even though she didn't feel like it. And you know what's funny is where your treasure is, there your heart follows. Your heart will get back in sync with where your priorities are, and just. I think we've dated each other throughout the whole 27 years. Not to say that we did it well, but that at the end of the day, it would always come around again, don't you think? I mean.
Yeah, one of the things I learned from my parents is that they always said, you marry your best friend. And so I always had that mentality of, okay, we're gonna be best friends. And I remember, people have said, well, I think what's helped Peter and I, we've actually been together for over 30 years. And so we were 17 when we started dating. And so we've grown up together, but we've studied each other. So even today, I've known him for 30 years. I still don't pretend I know what he needs. I don't assume anything about him. I'm always studying him. I'm asking him what he needs. I'm serving him. And so, and we mutually serve each other. And so we're just constantly, so do we still fight? Absolutely. And here's, I think what I would say I've learned, if you'd say, what have you learned in 27 years? How have you stayed together? Is that I think it's frustrating that we adore each other, we love each other, and we still offend each other. Like all the time. We still misunderstand each other. We still miscommunicate each other. And I think, man, if we've been together for that long and we adore each other, what hope is there for the rest of us? Do you know what I mean? For coworkers who you don't adore, maybe, but yet you still have miscommunications and fights. And so I've really had to learn that miscommunications and misunderstandings are part of being human, right? We're never gonna evolve to a place where we don't have miscommunications and misunderstandings. What I've had to grow in is not attaching offense to the miscommunication and to the misunderstanding. And so I don't assume, even if he talks to me in a tone that I think is offensive, if we're gonna fight, I'm tone sensitive, you know what I mean? So I'm always accusing him of his tone, and he's always super logical and literally, says, there's no tone, Carolyn, that could ever help you, you know what I mean?
If I talked like a robot, would that suddenly be better?
I don't know if anyone else does this, but I'm like, if there was a video camera right now that was recording our conversation, the whole world would see that your tone is offensive, you know what I mean? And so, does anyone else say that? Okay. All right, so I've learned not to do that. Can we just be honest? That doesn't help in a fight. And so I've learned to say, okay, Peter is not sitting there going with a knife like, I want to offend Carolyn. I want to hurt her. He loves me. He adores me. And yet, sometimes his tone doesn't work with me. Do you know what I mean? And let's be honest, sometimes my body language does not work with him, And so, and I always want to be judged by my heart. Like, my heart is so pure, I'm just trying to serve you. And so our fights will be over ice cream and pizza. Like, they're the dumbest things, but it's the same repetitive fight because it's this misunderstanding in communication and tone and body language. And so I've had to learn, okay, ask questions, seek to understand. He's not trying to hurt my feelings. So instead, what did you mean by that? And I've noticed that when I overlook offense, instead of getting blowing up the situation, if Peter was off at all, he always, and I want you guys to all hear, always apologizes. And if I'm off and he doesn't confront me on it, I always apologize back to him. We know when we're off. We know when we're rude. We know when we're cranky. Do you know what I mean? And I don't need the other person to call me on it because then that will become a 3-hour fight. I'm just being honest, So we've just learned, overlook offense, believe the best, seek to understand. And then sometimes we do autopsies of our fights later and go, how could I have said that? Give me a phrase. How could I have said that in a way that didn't cause that to blow up? Because when I responded to you, I just caused World War III. So how do we de-escalate?
We fight differently now than we did even 10 years ago or 20 before that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? If you think about it, Like our 4-hour fights in the beginning are now 4 minutes, and we're like, yeah, we've already been down this. We're never gonna think alike, but let's think together.
Yeah.
Right? We're never gonna see eye to eye on this one. Let's walk hand in hand. Let's figure out not your way, not my way, a higher way. And let's not escalate by doing random acts of melodrama. Anybody else melodramatic out there? You know what I'm saying? Like, you know it. You know who you are. Well, you know, I think, like, now, like, when we're fighting, it's pretty much when we're both overtired, which then
Blood
it's obvious.
sugar crashing, you know.
Yeah, hangry.
Yeah.
Good.
Dude, so good, so brilliant. And I've actually seen how you guys serve each other and how you've actually been honest with the conversations, and you've led us as staff members to be pressing into our marriages in that same way. So I appreciate that so much about you. Pastor Peter, you said something I just want to pull. I'll ask for you to just expound on it a little bit more. But you said this idea of reinventing yourselves. You guys have done that so many times over your marriage. Melissa and I have been married for 12 years. We've seen seasons. We've seen how seasons can force us to change a little bit. My question to you is, one, how do you recognize that the season is changing? And then two, how do you position yourself to actually be in a position to change?
The season is changing when you have diapers to change. That's how you know it is changing. Now, honestly, what's funny is I think about all the different phases we've been through. So, like, you start out when you're dating, you're like co-adventurers. That's the way you relate to each other. And you go on dates and you're like, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And you're dreaming about the future, right? Well, eventually you get married, you start getting a house. Then you start relating to each other as adventurers and co-managers of a household. Like, hey, did we get the bills paid? How are we going to make this financial decision to make sure we can afford blah? And then all of a sudden you add kids into the mix, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, babies take over your life, you know, like literally. And then it's like you're co-managers of the humans in your household. Eventually you stop relating as adventurers and dreamers, and you start to relate. Like, half your conversations are, did you pick up milk? Did you take the kid to the orthodontist? Your life gets hijacked, if you could say it that way, which is why we've always really tried to take dates apart from our kids. Like, every 7 days, have a date night. Every 7 weeks, a little weekend. Every 7 months, a vacation. 777. Apart from our kids. Like, a lot of people, they literally cannot part from their kids, and I think that's the most unhealthy thing ever, because you can't break out of that role definition rut, if that makes sense. And
let me just interrupt and say, your kids will never say to you, go on a date, Mom and Dad. They're not gonna do that. They're gonna always complain and whine and say, don't ever leave me when they're little. And so I would just flat out tell our kids, no, our marriage, we actually have you as children because of our love for each other. And if you wanna keep us as your parents, then we gotta keep having love, you know what I mean? And so, like, we gotta pursue this. This came first before the children. And so, like, I just would say no, we love each other more than we love you. And they'd be all offended, like, what? I'm like, I'm not gonna apologize for that, because this was first, before children. And so we love our kids, never go back to not having kids, but we always have kept this a priority and always have just pursued, and whatever season of life. When they were little, we couldn't go on walks. I remember we lived in a neighborhood here in the Twin Cities that just wasn't very safe. So we would try to do dates that, like, we would rent a movie, you know what I mean, back when you rented movies, you know? And so, like, you just different things, but we've always had a TV show that we watch. We always, you know, now once the kids are older, we go on walks. So we've just, in every season, we've made sure, what's it gonna look like for us to connect apart from our kids, from a daily, from a weekly.
Man, that is so good. Man, I feel like I got a roadmap for the next, like, 27 years of our marriage. Oh, there she is. I was like, I couldn't see you behind Pastor Peter. Absolutely. All right, so you guys are talking about your kids, which you have 3 amazing kids, 2 off in college, 1 is still in the house. What's up, Eden? How you doing? Doing good? And, like, as youth pastor, I've actually had the privilege of being your kid's youth pastor, and still currently your kid's youth pastor. And I've seen just how intentional that you've been in your parenting. What keys do you have in being intentional with parenting? Like, if you were to boil it down, like, how do you be a really intentional parent?
Yeah, gosh. Okay, do you want me to go first? Okay. You guys have heard me say this a million times, but if you were to take discipleship, the Christian worldview, and break it down into, say, 2,000 conversations. Now, imagine if you needed 2,000 conversations with your kids. I want to program my kid to love the Lord, to understand the Bible. 2,000 conversations. Actually, it's not just conversations, it's impartations and demonstrations, okay? So it's like 50 conversations on dating, 50 conversations on how to get into the Bible, 50 conversations on how not to use credit cards, on how to save your money, on how to get a job, on how to, on all those types of things, okay? So, but then there's impartations and demonstrations. This is how you forgive the coworker or forgive your classmate who offended you. This is how you live generously. This is how you tithe. This is how you tithe plus. This is how you really sacrifice, right? And we've had to demonstrate that. So if you think about that, our goal has always been to log as many hours demonstrating. And of course, in order to have those moments, those conversations, I've always tried to make it my goal to have 2 hobbies in common with each of my kids. And I don't make them choose my hobbies, I jump into their hobbies. And so if their hobby is watching baby seals flop on, YouTube, my job is to get into baby seals. That's why I know everything about One Direction. I know a lot of things. I'm Minecraft extraordinaire. I can kick anybody's butt on Fortnite. I can just, because I'm trying to get into my kids' world. And then, of course, the moment I become good at anything, they're on to something new, and it's frustrating. But also, here's why I do that. It takes 2 hours of video game time to have 10 minutes of good dad time. And so I've got to earn the right to have the 10 minutes. And so, which, all of my kids went through a reclusive, I don't like you, Dad, kind of phase. And so I had to kind of force my way into their bedroom and say, check out this baby seal, okay? and then eventually we start talking, get a little bit, talk about One Direction, and then boom, dad time. You know what I'm saying? And so it's logging those 2,000 hours, and the problem is that I think most parents, they just get behind on it. I think most Christian parents, there's a stat that we talked about in May, first Wednesday, 75% of all evangelical charismatic kids are walking away from Christ in college. Why? I don't think it's because the parents aren't smart or the parents aren't intelligent. I think that they just logged 600 of the conversations of the 2,000. They just got behind on it, and they were too absorbed in their careers or whatever in that golden window. And so it's for me, when my kids were in that 11 to 16-year-old range, we basically turned all of our 2-year goals into 10-year goals and said, forget it. Professionally, the church is going to plateau for a while if it has to. In order for me, we're gonna have less money. We're gonna live in a smaller house. We're gonna drive cruddier cars, rusty minivan with missing hubcaps, so that I can log more hours with my kids. And I do not regret any of those decisions, because now I've got all this time to do all sorts of stuff professionally. It's like if in the juggling act of life there are glass balls, there are rubber balls. Your marriage and your kids are glass. Your career, your finances, your dreams, those are rubber balls. They will always be bouncing back, and you can pick them up off the floor at the appropriate time, but those glass balls, you can only drop them a couple times before they crack. And I just didn't want to do that with my girls or with my son, during that window. And so that golden window, it's focusing on that.
So question, how much do you know about One Direction?
Well,
who's your favorite?
Well, currently it's Harry. Everybody knows. Started out as Zayn, and then I switched to Liam, and then both of those disappointed me, and then I went to Harry.
You really know.
I have no
I
idea if you're just saying names, But hey, timing, I want to have a question about timing.
Someday.
Because I think of back when I was a kid and some of the conversations that I had with my parents, and it was just, for the lack of a better description, I just wasn't ready to maybe receive what they were talking about. Not that it was bad wisdom, it was just I wasn't in a place that I could receive it, or it felt like it was so awkward that I was trying to jettison out of there as quick as possible.
Yeah.
Talk about timing. Timing is everything. How do you know when to have certain conversations?
Well, first off, it's knowing when your kids tend to ask the most questions. Our kids would tend to ask the most questions before bed because they wanted to stay up later. I know the game. They thought they were tricking their dad into, whatever. No, so, but I knew to be available, I would never, ever, ever plan anything from 7 to 9 because I knew that was for my kids and I could flop on their beds and just, again, most of the time they weren't comfortable until you're hanging out. That's the whole point of, it takes an hour to get the 10 minutes. You know what I'm saying? You earn it. And a lot of times it would be like me asking questions about their day until I could get something meaty. Like, you know, I would never waste a friend drama, ever. Never waste a friend disaster. It would just be like, let's talk about that. What would you say to your friend? Well, and then, you know, I'm actually discipling them without lecturing, because that's the problem, is that up until 11, there may be like, you know, our girl, like abstract reasoning kicks in between 11 and 13. So it's not like they're asking deep theological questions until then, right? But it was almost like, so, and then by 16, once they have their driver's license, you lose proximity. And then they get a job. And so once you lose proximity and leverage, it's harder. That's why that window is so important. And so for our kids, I would force awkward. Like I would, you know, I'm not gonna hesitate to talk about sexual purity with my kids. Get this, 90% of teenagers, 8 to 16, have already seen pornography on the internet. 90%. So if you're not talking to your kid about pornography by the time they're 8, you're behind. I'm just saying, you're taking a gamble. And so I wanted to normalize that conversation as soon as possible. I think sometimes if you normalize it earlier, then it's not weird when they get, because they, you know, it's almost like you got to get it early enough. Hey, this is what we talk about. Dads and sons, they talk about sexual purity. That's what we do. And in normalizing that, same thing. And so same thing with dating. There's a million conversations I had about dating by the time they were in 4th grade. I'm not gonna wait around until some dude likes my daughters. You know what I'm saying? What the heck? That's too late. Too late.
Well, and like speaking of dating, being youth pastor and involved in the young adults, a lot of singles. I'm gonna steal a J. Sid Laird line of scoping and hoping. Okay, I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. That's not my line, but it's a great line. Scoping and hoping. Like for the older youth, young adult who is single, how do you approach dating? Maybe coming from like maybe you didn't have that conversation of like, hey, here are just some filters to be thinking through. Like, what are some filters that you would say on like dating for older youth and maybe something like young adults?
Okay, well, first off, as a parent, I want to talk to my kids about dating before they're scoping and hoping. Okay, so here's when you start talking about dating: when boys have cooties and girls are all weird. Okay, that's when you talk about it, when they're not interested in it. And the things that I always made really clear to my girls and my son, when, like way early on, I'm talking like 5th grade, I would take them on constant father-daughter dates, and I would actually there were a couple things that I would really make clear. First off, dating is not a unilateral decision, it's a family decision. Not in a controlling way, but in an anchoring way. Like, you don't go rock climbing without a harness and a helmet. Okay, so not in a controlling way, but it's a family decision. When you're ready. Okay. Second thing is, you're not ready. Dating too early is like eating a frozen pizza that hasn't been cooked. It's not good. Okay, they knew that. They heard me say that a bazillion times. And again, things like guarding your sexual purity, things like that. And I told them that from the very beginning. And then once they got into that like high school age, when they were actually starting to date, then I would be like, okay, I know guys are interested in you. Now, what I don't want you to do is don't call it dating, but you're dating. And how do you know you're dating without calling it dating? Well, I told my daughters, if you're a girl, your best friends should be girlfriends, period. No best friends with the opposite sex. That's not possible. At some point, somebody's gonna like somebody. And so this isn't what everybody has to do. This is what Haas's do. This is what Haas's do. So I don't want to demonize somebody else's dating rules with my own, but this is what Haas's do. And I'm like, now I told my girls, all guys are idiots until about 35.
I'm out of idiot.
Wait, how old?
I'm out of idiot. There we go.
Okay, but to be fair, your birthday was like a month ago.
Yeah.
Okay, so like you are just
idiot.
barely not an idiot.
Yeah.
Okay, which I think would still classify you under the bar.
Sorry to throw you under the bus there, Paris. But no, I'm telling them, hey, guys are still developing up until about 25. I'm like, and so I asked them like right around 15, I'm like, how much have your opinion changed in the last 5 years? And they're like if you had to, at 10 years old, choose who your eternal spouse is gonna be 5 years ago, who would you have picked? And they usually are like, oh my gosh, I would have said so-and-so. Gross, that's so bad. And I'm like, okay, now just as much as your emotions changed in the last 5 years, guess what? It's gonna change in the next 5. So you can go out there and do what most teenagers do and recreationally date until their heart is all chewed up and then regret it, or you can chill. And so I told my girls, I think it's dumb to date before 18, but if you ask me at 16, I won't say no. In other words, you can start at 16, but it's gonna be on my terms. And of course, we had rules for how that was gonna, if somebody wanted to date my daughters, they had to come over for dinner. They had to do, certain things. By the way, I've written all this down. I literally posted a blog about it. At peterhaas.org, so if you're interested as parents. But for scoping and hoping folks, okay? Let's say you're out there and you're single and you're ready to mingle, okay? You're out there and you're looking at that one person across the worship circle. You know what I'm talking about?
Wait.
Should we make them raise hands in case they find their spouse today?
Yes.
Let's like get that worship position in, because like I feel like that like is judged. Are you a single hand? Are you two hands? Are you holding the TV? Like how are you worshiping?
Yeah.
Are you the swayer? Are you swayer when you're worshiping?
Yeah, well, you want to make sure that you're with the right worshiper, apparently. No, to be honest, for the scoping and hoping, here's a little bit of advice. Who you are is who you attract. Don't expect a princess if you ain't a prince, okay? Take care of your character. Deal with your porn addiction. Okay, listen, let me just tell you, ladies, did you know that your odds of depression increases by 43% when you date and marry someone who's a porn addict? That's a fact, okay? Did you know your odds of an eating disorder skyrockets by 23% when you marry a guy who's addicted to pornography? Did you know that your self-esteem generally will lower by 40% if you marry a guy who hasn't dealt with his sexual issues? I'm just saying, be aware of that kind of stuff, because they can raise their hands in worship and still not have their heart in love with Jesus. And so I told my daughters, hey, make sure you don't date a guy who does not have an accountability group for sexual purity, and make sure if you're dating a guy who's actively involved in his local church, not just says he's a Christian. I know a lot of guys here, I would never want my daughters dating. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love you, you can come here, I'll love on you, I'll be your dad, but I don't want you dating my daughter, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, and same thing, scoping and hoping, folks, who you are is who you attract. Don't date anyone with potential. Find someone that's got active ministry involvement in a local church and an accountability group for sexual purity. I think those are 4 kind of really good bedrock things. I also have a blog on this called Dating Without Dying too, if you're
Brilliant.
In that phase as well. So.
And let me just say, I think, practically speaking, like even, what's funny about our story is we started dating at 17, and all of a sudden by 19, I was like, I want to marry you, and I know that you're the one I want to marry, and Peter was like, I'm not ready to make that commitment, and so we actually broke up. And I remember I met with...
No, she dumped me.
Because I was 19, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to get over you. It's gonna take me 2 years to get over you, and then I'm gonna need to meet someone. And so, I had my life planned out. And so, but here's, you know what? I met with a pastor. I was smart enough to meet with a pastor and say, talk to me. And he was so good. My dad had passed away when I was 16, so I didn't have a dad in my life. And so this pastor was a spiritual father, and so he just said, Carolyn, Peter's not the only one. He's like, there's a lot of guys who would love you. And I know you've got eyes for Peter only, but there's a lot of guys who would cherish you. And so if he's not willing to commit, break up with him. So I did. And it actually was beautiful because it sent Peter on a journey of, whoa, okay, what is marriage? What is commitment? What am I actually looking for? And he ended up going on, and he met with a pastor, and he met with a second pastor, and he read books, and he started going on a journey of, wait, I just don't want to live in idealistic, romantic world. I need to actually, get wisdom here. And so I remember there were times where Peter and I was like, he'd be like, I want to be in a rock band. And I'd just be like, oh my gosh, I should just break up with him because I don't want to marry a rock star. I don't want to travel. And like, oh my gosh. Dumb little things. And I remember, this is how I knew Peter was ultimately the one. And obviously we got married. But I knew it because, when I was a child, I'd given my life to Christ. But when I was 13, I'd given my life to God for full-time ministry. And what that meant for me as a 13-year-old was, God, my life is not my own. I will do whatever you tell me to do. I will go wherever you want me to go. I will not have the American dream. Like, I assumed as a 13-year-old that meant I was going to be a missionary in another country. And so for me, it was like, I have to marry someone who also is not holding, I got to do this without squeezing the water bottle. Oh my gosh. How do I do this?
I was like, what is happening?
It's like a paradox. Okay, we'll do the mic. Okay, so someone who's not holding onto their life like, this is mine, this is mine, this is my life, I deserve this, I'm entitled to this career, to living in this type of house, and to this, So I knew I need someone who can hear from God and who's willing to obey God and do whatever God calls them to do. And then I need someone who's teachable. Someone who will actually go to mentors and teachers and not just say, this is what I feel like God's calling me to do and want confirmation bias, but actually say, correct me, what do you see that I don't see, what are my blind spots? And so that's what I saw in Peter, is that he would hear from the Lord, he would obey, and I knew so spiritually, I'm like, okay, well, I'm willing. And you guys, there's been 3 radical times in our marriage where God has spoken to us and called us to radical, painful obedience. But we did it together. And we heard from the Lord, and we submitted to mentors and to wise counsel, and then we took those steps of faith. And every one of those have been life-changing, and now I can be like, I'm so glad we did that. And so to me, that's the top criteria.
Let me see if I can guess them. When those moments were.
Okay.
When the Lord called us to lay down our education and move to Farmville. Mm-hmm. God called us back to our hometown in Wisconsin, and we were big city people, and it was like death to our dreams.
And death to our ego to not graduate.
Yeah, and then when the Lord called us back here, after we had started loving it and had everything, mm-hmm. right?
Yep.
And then when the Lord called us to empty all of our bank accounts,
yeah,
and go all in again, mm-hmm. for when we were launching our campus.
Yeah.
Come on. No, let me tell you something about each one of those moments, though. All of those moments ended up resulting in a miracle. And every one of those moments sent us on another crazy God adventure that reinvented our lives, reinvigorated our marriage, sucked our kids on mission. It was when we were emptying our bank accounts and we brought our kids into that decision, like, hey, kids, we won't be able to go on vacations. We won't be able to, we won't be able to upgrade our house. And would you want to sacrifice for Jesus? And our daughters were like, hey, you can't outgive God. And it was a moment where they were in it with us. And now it's fun. It's fun to watch them process that, those decisions retrospectively, because in some ways you want to talk about reinventing your life. I just keep thinking about, and let me say this, young people, when you're looking for a spouse, don't be worried about looks. That's not going to be the number one thing that's going to matter to you over time. At some point in your life, this is really it. Who do you want to be next to you on your worst day ever? Law of averages says every one of us is going to get a major medical diagnosis at some point in our lives. Every one of us. Did you know 1 out of 1 people are dying nowadays? I know, it's shocking. Every one of us is going to get a major medical diagnosis. Who do you want next to you? Yeah. Every one of us is going to have the death of a loved one, and it's going to send us into a grieving process. Who do you want next to you? Who do you want next to you when every one of us is going to go through a major identity crisis, loss of job, or financial tragedy at some point in our lives? Who do you want next to you in that moment? That is the thing that matters most. Looks, I'll tell you what, our looks, they've come and gone over the years. Two weeks ago, I talked about how I gained 40 pounds and then lost it. She did the same thing, gained 40 pounds, lost it. Looks will come and go. I'm telling you, an attraction will even come and go. And feelings follow focus. What doesn't come and go, and that is refreshing all the time, is godliness, an ability to be full of the fruit of the Holy Spirit, an ability to trust God for a miracle when all the cards are down and you don't know what else to do.
Yeah, come on.
That's what you want.
Can we give it up for faithfulness? I think it's a big deal. Because in many ways, each one of us is reaping reward for the faithfulness and the sacrifice that you guys have put in time and time again. And I didn't grow up in the church. In many ways, Pastor Peter is the only pastor I've ever known. And it is just humbling to do. But I remember how you have taught me over the years of how to dream. But I have seen you have dreams and be able to quickly lay them down and just be able to walk out what God is asking you to do in that moment. And it's never been about the destination, but always about just walking out faithfulness. And so, guys, we cannot celebrate it enough. If you could, just give it up for these 3 times, because it is a big deal. It is something that I've seen in you. It's something that I appreciate in you so much. It's something that I've taken away in my own faith journey. And I thank you. Thank you so much. Our city, all of our campuses has gone through a lot in the last couple years. It's been crazy times, and mental health been a thing. Like, we've all kind of felt that. I think everybody in this room can relate to just low mental health over the last, because circumstances have been kind of wild. How have you personally weathered that storm?
You know, what's funny is before I gave my life to Christ, I was very, very angsty and depressed a lot. And it was a thing that I had to sort through once I found the Lord and I discovered memorizing Scripture and meditating on Scripture. It was a lifeline for me. Same thing with writing music. I would literally, for mental health, I would write music and memorize Scripture were like the 2 things that kept me grounded. I do remember though, I went through a several year window where I was depressed, and I knew it. And it's really hard when you have to be a preacher and you're struggling with it too, if I could be honest, because don't get me wrong, meditating and writing messages was really good for me in the midst of that. But I realized, I think there's actually, to be honest, I wasn't even open to the idea of a chemical imbalance until I had 3 different anxiety attacks that I thought were heart attacks, went to the ER 3 different times. And then the doctor said, hey, maybe you have a lack of dopamine, endorphins. He kind of forced me to try an SSRI for a season that I was not really open to it. And then literally when because it's an antidepressant drug, and I'm like, I'm not depressed. I just thought I had a heart attack. And he's like, well, okay, after your 3rd one, let's just try it. And of course, immediately 40% increase in sunshiny, happy feeling, overnight. It was almost weird, like I'm on a vacation, And I remember thinking, I can't believe I lived without this for that long. It was actually just a chemical imbalance that I had. And don't get me wrong, I don't think that's the solution for everybody. I think a lot of people, you need to get more sleep. You need to get more consistent with church. You need to get rid of pornography and some of the other saboteurs in your life of your health, your bad eating, your lack of working out, all these types of things. But I do believe there is a chemical thing. I think you need to solve chemical things with God, but then, hey, sometimes God's up in heaven saying, I made a drug on purpose, use it, right? You're not more spiritual. If God's up in heaven saying, I gave you a watch so that you can figure out what time it is, you're not more spiritual by asking me what time it is all the time. I gave you a watch, hello. I think God gives us practical solutions, and other people, though, it's not gonna be that. But I do think, I'm actually embarrassed to think that I lived the first 40 years of my life without acknowledging the chemical imbalance, and that it actually was a partially genetic thing. And so I say that because I do want to give you guys permission, but the dumbest thing that any one of us could do is ignore our bodies, ignore reaching out for help and getting that help, be it chemical, be it relational, be it physical. And so just encouraging everybody just to make sure you're surrounded. Don't wait until you're depressed to get the support network you need. That's why we're always saying, get into small groups. There's a huge connection between depression and how many friends you have. Did you know that? There's a huge correlation between depression and working out in healthy sleep patterns. So it's like taking care of the obvious things, but even when you've done all of those things, hey, get professional help too. There's no shame in it. We've tried to normalize that for our kids over the years.
Yeah, in fact, that's actually something all of our kids have seen therapists. We're seeing therapists. Like it's a common healthy.
It's an oil change. It's not what dysfunctional people do. It's called, you drive a car, you change the oil, okay?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I will say this, there are some crazy therapists out there. You gotta find a therapist who loves Jesus and believes in the local church, because there's a lot of therapists out there who will just deconstruct the local church. So that's not gonna help you. So you gotta have a therapist that loves Jesus, that loves the local church, and is pro-marriage and will help you in your relationships. But I think for me, memorizing scripture, having friends, being honest and real. I'm always ask for prayer. Always ask for prayer. Always texting someone, hey, I need prayer. Like, I wake up every day, and before I roll out of bed, it is, Jesus, I need you. I'm literally, part of it is I can't even wake up because I'm so sleep deprived. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I'm just like, Jesus. It's literally all I can do is call out his name. But I think there's something to that. It is the only thing I can do is call out on his name, is Jesus. And then I reach out to people, and I'm real, and I say, I need encouragement. And then on a practical level, Peter and I are huge. I'll speak for myself. I'm huge into all the personality tests and all the assessments, not as an excuse for behavior, not as a label. In fact, I'll get really frustrated at you if you label me and call me numbers and try to guess what my numbers. Don't do that. But I love personality tests so I can understand myself. And so then I can grow. So it's never an excuse for behavior. It's a launch pad for growth. It's not to label anybody. It's not to say, oh, I'm an introvert, therefore I can't. No. It's, oh, Lord, help me. If this is my wiring, help me grow. Help me play. Help me rest. Help me. And so I found just personally, everything that triggered me in 2020, 2021, even now, 2022, every time I'm triggered, it's actually attached to one of my strength finders. So if you've ever done the strength finders test. And so I just think that's insightful and really helpful to know about yourself and go, oh, I'm triggered because I'm wired a certain way, which means I'm passionate or I'm motivated to do life a certain way. Therefore, when this happens to me, it gets me a little more angsty. Or does that make sense? So to know yourself, because then I can know how to pray, then I can know how to get healthy, life-giving friends into my life to say, and let me just say this. One of your questions that we didn't cover, and I know we're out of time, but one of your questions was, how do you have Peter challenge you? And I think it's important for you to hear this. Peter and I are so different. Like, we are so different. And I so value how different we are because we so respect each other that I rely on Peter to give me perspective. And so I'm real with him about my emotions, and I'm real with him about my triggers and my insecurities. I'm like, oh, this messed with me. But I don't just say it. I'm like, give me perspective. What am I not seeing? Where am I wrong? And sometimes he will validate me and be like, no, that was really awkward, and you are absolutely valid to feel that way. And I'll be like, thank you. And then other times he's like, no, you're totally interpreting that wrong. That is not what they meant. And I'm like, thank you. And I believe him. And I appreciate his perspective.
That is not what Brian meant in that meeting. Okay? Say that all the time.
Man, that is so good. I just have one last question, but even just for me personally, this has been so rewarding just to get more of a conversation where we actually get to see your heart, because we see it on stage and we might see it from a distance, but to actually hear you guys talk about how much you love God and how much you trust in him, how much you love each other, and how much you are always fighting for each other, how much you love your kids, and how you would do anything to protect and to pave a way that is not just to what the world thinks that they need, but for what ultimately God has for them. It's so inspiring being someone who's 9-10 months married, but seeing you guys go the distance in the mountaintops, in the valleys. And I'm going to kind of tee you up with this last question, and I almost want this to be your moment to speak directly to substance, because you guys love God and you love each other, but being as close as we are staff to you, we have the opportunity to see how much you love people. You love systems and you love building church, but at the end of the day, your heart for people is contagious. Like that's the reason why all the staff is on staff, is because we were actually drawn to how much you love people, how much you were sacrificed to see other people who are far from God come close to God. And in the last 2 years, church attendance has dropped. I think a stat came out where 33% of people who were coming to church are now permanently not attending church. So from a pastor who deeply loves God and deeply loves people, what do you say to us about the people who have fallen off, who have not yet come back to church? What's your heart and what's your message to that?
I think there's a lot of Christians out there that don't see church as a family. They see it as a church service. Like if you were to say, what is church? They think, oh, it's a service. For me, you've heard it said a million times, church doesn't start until the service is over. It's about the relationships you build before and after the services and in between church services at small groups. It's about friends who would rip through a roof to get you to go experience Jesus, right? It's family. It's people who do life with each other. You can take or leave all of this. I literally don't, I mean, not to say that church services don't matter, but that at the end of the day, we need people in families. We need people adopted into, because what's so beautiful is because our marriage is healthy and we've been able to adopt so many people into our family, because, and same thing, I love it, like some of the most fun things is when my daughter would bring all of her college student friends, and we got Reba in the front row, she's my other daughter, and my daughter would bring all of her college friends home, and we would just adopt them, and next thing you know, I mean, I'm reading your lease agreement in Florida, and I love that, you know, like I loved helping you, and I, you know, you want to adopt more people into it, and I want to encourage you, do that for other people. Be that for other people. If you've got friends, if you've got community here, invite people into it. All of our small groups that are kicking off. We need more and more people to be adopted into small groups. Like you said, Paris, 33% of the body of Christ in America quit going to church in COVID and hasn't come back yet. Okay? And a lot of them, it's not that they became anti-God, they just got out of the habit. And they need one of you to invite them back into it. They're streaming church, thinking that's church. No, church is where you can confess your sin to one another so that you may be healed, James 5:16. That's church. And so inviting people into that, and actually, if I could just quickly say this real fast. Coming up, you saw the Tailgate Sunday, you see these little cards, okay? That's a week and a half from now, okay? September 18th. All that is, it's like a back to church Sunday. It's an opportunity for you to invite all your friends back to church. All those people that are still streaming, that you know are still streaming and won't come to physical church yet, invite them back. Now, they may not come, but hey, really, just so you guys know, kind of the whole idea is I'm preaching kind of more of an evangelistic message, and it's gonna be super fun. We're gonna have food in all of our foyers and all that kind of stuff. Really, it's just an excuse to have a party. That's substance, right? I mean, come on. And we thought it's fall, let's call it Tailgate Sunday. Let's just make it fun.
Wear your favorite jersey. There might be some fights, you know, but
But we won't mention why. But anyway, so, you know, we're just gonna have fun. And invite your friends to that. But like, invite your friends into small group. Invite your friends into community. There are too many people in the Twin Cities. Okay, 600,000 people get wasted in our city every weekend. 600,000 will have 4 or more drinks in a single moment on Friday or Saturday. 600,000, okay? People live for the bars. They live for all sorts of things, and they need a Christian friend to invite them into something greater, something more fulfilling that will fill you greater than any alcoholic beverage ever could, any party ever could. And it's God's party, right? Why? Because it's filled with the joy of the Holy Spirit, which is something we've got. We've got to share that with more people and invite more people into it. And people will not jump into deeper circles of commitment on their own. They need to be invited multiple times. And so don't be afraid to be rejected. Don't be afraid to be the happy, naggy friend. Just come on out, tailgate Sunday. Come on out for Christmas. Come on out for whatever. Like we're creating excuses for people to come on out. And you guys know we got great plans coming up for the 18th. Oh my gosh.
It's going to be fun. Can we give it up for Pastors Peter and Carolyn Haas?
And these guys, don't you love Pastor Paris, Pastor Brian? We love you guys.